أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي ربنا زدنا علما ربنا زدنا علما ربنا زدنا علما اللهم فقهنا في الدين اللهم فقهنا في الدين اللهم فقهنا في الدين اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا وزدنا علما اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن سهلا إذا شئت آمين يا رب العالمين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to all my dear sisters. I hope all of you are doing good today, and I hope all of you are excited to join us today. And you were looking forward to learning today's surahs, especially Surah Yusuf. And I hope and pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts these efforts from all of us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it a journey that brings us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring a lot of barakah, blessings into our lives due to the learning of this beautiful book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ameen. So let us begin. And if you remember yesterday, I suggested to some of you that if possible, let me know the reasons of why you think any story is the best story, or what makes a story the best story, and what is the significance of the storytelling that we see in the Holy Quran, and what are the lessons for us to be derived when we read the stories of the prophets and of the previous nations, and so many other stories that are there in the Holy Quran for us. So we will inshallah today start off where we left yesterday. If you stopped at Surah Hud, and we will inshallah begin from there. And we had stopped at ayah number 24, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from ayah number 25 talks about the story of Nuh alayhi salam. So inshallah in today's lesson we will start off from there. So are all of you ready? You have your mushaf ready with you, and your highlighters, and your English translation with you. So inshallah, let's begin. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah Hud, if you remember, we talked about it initially, that this surah is named Surah Hud because the mention of Hud alayhi salam in verses 50 to 60, the story of Hud alayhi salam comes here, and because of that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the surah has been named Surah Hud. And then we also learned yesterday about the fact that Surah Hud was also revealed at the same time, around the same time as Surah Yunus was revealed, and that is why we see the same theme, similar theme is there in Surah Hud, just like in Surah Yunus. So what is the main theme of Surah Hud? Just for us to recollect from yesterday, the main theme of the surah is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us through many ayahs and stories of the prophets how important it is for us to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is an essential requirement. And then we see so many ayahs which tell us about how important it is to refute shirk. Shirk has to be discarded completely from our lives. And the other thing is, instead of directly addressing, because it is a Makki surah, instead of directly addressing the people of Makkah or people in general, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the surah talks to us or addresses us through the stories of these prophets, the story of Nuh alayhi salam, Hud alayhi salam, Salih alayhi salam, Lut alayhi salam, and then Shu'aib alayhi salam and Musa alayhi salam. So that is what we see in the surah. And let us begin from where we left, ayah number 25. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this part of the ayahs starts off the story of Nuh alayhi salam. So over here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَلَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا نُوحًا إِلَىٰ قَوْمِهِ إِنِّي لَكُمْ نَذِيرٌ مُبِينٌ. And we talked about this. The prophets are Nadir and Mubin, in the sense that Nadir and Bashir, we talked about it yesterday. Nadir as a warner for those people who deny the message, and Bashir, a bringer of good news for those people who accept the message of the prophet. So we're here too. The prophet Nuh alayhi salam is saying the same. He's telling the people that inni lakum nadhirun mubin, that I am a clear warner to you. And what do we see from the story of Nuh alayhi salam? There are so many lessons for us to extract. That he was a prophet who, from whose story we see that he was so much dedicated to, conveying the message, conveying the truth. And from the story of Nuh alayhi salam, we can also derive this lesson that he was not only dedicated, but his sincerity and his perseverance. And we see that in other part of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that he warned people he gave the message to the people for 950 years. That is, a lot of time that he dedicated for conveying the message to the people. Imagine his perseverance, and imagine how dedicated he was to his purpose of conveying the message. So something for us to derive from the life of from the life of Nuh alayhi salam, is that how dedicated are we? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to us this book of guidance. So when we have this guidance, are we that much dedicated in conveying this message to the rest of humanity? And inshallah, we will see how he addressed his people. So he says here, the first thing that he tells them, that you not worship except Allah. So the message of Tawheed, and believing that there was only one God, and that is Allah. Indeed, I fear for you the punishment of a painful day. So this also shows us from the story of Nuh alayhi salam that he was a well-wisher. He was one who wanted good for his people. He wanted them to attain guidance. And we see this from the stories of all the prophets, that they were the ones who wanted people to get guidance. They were the ones who were well-wishers. They wanted good, they wanted khair for the people. So something for us to learn from the stories of these prophets is that how much of a well-wisher am I when it comes to others in my community? Do I want good for them too? Especially the most important thing, when it comes to being a well-wisher, is attaining guidance and for them to be successful in Akhirah. So are we that much dedicated to conveying this message of the Holy Quran to them? And as we discussed earlier, our akhlaq, our manners, our dealings with people of other faith itself is going to be dawah. That itself is going to be, playing a big role, inviting others to guidance. So let's move on. Over here, Nuh alayhi salam says, so the eminent among those who disbelieve from his people said, we do not see you but as a man like ourselves. So they denied the message of Nuh alayhi salam. Why? Because he was just a human being like them. And what else do they say? And we do not see you followed except by those who are the lowest of us and at first suggestion. And we do not see in you over us any merit. Rather, we think you are liars. So what does Nuh alayhi salam, when he conveys the message, people deny his message. Why? Because they say that first thing, he's a human being, and the second thing is they look at his followers. So the followers of Nuh alayhi salam were the ones who had accepted Islam. They were the ones who were weak in the society. They were the poor. So the elite class, they are saying, the leaders of the people of Nuh alayhi salam, they are saying, we don't accept your message. Why? Because your followers are the poor. They are the less privileged. So something for us to take from this story of Nuh alayhi salam is a person needs to accept guidance no matter from where the source is. If it is authentic, if it is the truth, then we need to take it as the truth, and we need to accept it. and there shouldn't be any prejudice based on the fact that who are the followers of that person, how many followers are there of that person. So let's move on. What else did Muhammad salam say? Ya qawmi, qala ya qawmi, and look at his tone, his choice of words. So much of good that he wants for his people. He said, "Oh my people, have you considered if I should be upon clear evidence from my Lord, while He has given me mercy from Himself, and it has been made unapparent to you? Should we force it upon you while you are averse to it?" So we see here that he gives them so many reasoning as to them, so that they can accept the truth. And then he says again, waya qawmi. Again, he addresses people, "Oh my people." He is associating himself with the people. That is why you see he's saying, "My people, I am from you and you are from me. I ask not of you for it any wealth." So he doesn't want any worldly benefits for conveying the message to them. And we learn from all these attributes and from the stories of the prophets that the prophets, they call every person to accept Allah as their creator. They are calling to Tawheed. The second thing we learn is that they do not want any worldly benefit. And the other thing is, you see that they are well-wishers of the people. And from these three characteristics we learn, there are so many other characteristics too, but from these three main characteristics of the prophets, we know that these should be the characteristics of any da'i, of any person who's calling others onto deen. The first thing is connecting them with the creator. That's the first thing, the message of Tawheed. The second thing is that a person doesn't want any worldly gain from connecting to the creator. The third thing is that person has to has khair in him for the people. He wants good for the people. That is why he is calling others to Islam or to guidance. And then he says, "My reward is not but from Allah, and I am not one to drive away those who have believed." So the people who are believing in Nuh alayhi salam, he's saying that they are, ones who are near to Allah. Why? Because they are the ones who accepted Islam. Let's move on. So from the story of Nuh alayhi salam, we know that his tone, his words show us that he's a well-wisher. He's a one who calls others to guidance, to the truth with so much of love. And the other thing that comes to our mind is his dedication. Like, imagine the people are, not accepting his message, and he gives them so many words of, what should I say, a message of guidance, a message. He continues to give the message of Tawheed, the message from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then we see that the people, they say, "Oh, no, you have disputed us and been frequent in dispute of us. So bring us what you threaten us if you should be of the truthful." So he continues to give the message of Tawheed, of guidance, and the people continue to disobey him and not accept the message. And then I wanted to highlight few ayahs. We see that the people, they continue to ridicule him, ridicule the message of Nuh alayhi salam. And then what happens, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and it was revealed to Nuh alayhi salam in ayah number 36, "No one will believe from you, from your people, except those who have already believed. So do not be distressed by what they have been doing." And then the next ayah number 37, we see, "And construct the ship under our observation and our inspiration, and do not address me concerning those who have wronged. Indeed, they are to be drowned." So where here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, gave them, initially Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the people of Nuh alayhi salam that time, and they were given all the message of guidance from Nuh alayhi salam. And right now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells Nuh alayhi salam that no one else is going to believe in your message now, and now is the time that you have to construct this ship. And basically, it is telling Nuh alayhi salam that the time that was given to the people, it is over, and soon the azab of Allah, the punishment of Allah, is going to come. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, tells Nuh alayhi salam that he has to build the ship according to the instruction that is given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so what happens in ayah number 38, we see, and he constructed the ship, and whenever an assembly of the eminent of his people, like the leaders of the people of Nuh alayhi salam, they passed by that site where Nuh alayhi salam was building the ship, they ridiculed him. So imagine how hard it must have been for Nuh alayhi salam to do something that Allah is commanding him to do, and the people around him, they are making fun of him. Has it ever happened to us then when we are abiding by Islam, when we are wearing hijab, when we have to pray in a public spot, we feel that people might make fun of us, we fear people, but we should always know and know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will certainly help us when we are steadfast in our deen. And the other thing is, from the stories of the prophets, we know that they had perseverance and they were steadfast. Initially, it was difficult for them, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, later on, many people accepted their message. And that is what we learn from the stories of these prophets. Let's move on. So the story of Nuh alayhi salam comes from ayah number 25 to 34. And then in ayah number 34 and 35, we see that the pagans of Makkah are being addressed, that why do you deny the message? And then the story of Nuh alayhi salam continues from ayah number 36 to 48. And let's skip all these ayahs. I want you, or I request you as a homework, that all of you read these passage so that you know the details of the story of Nuh alayhi salam. And because today I want to focus on the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, inshallah. So from these ayahs of the story of Nuh alayhi salam, we know that the construction of the ship was done according to the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, according to the hukum of Allah. And we see that when the flood came, Nuh alayhi salam had the ship with the believers and pairs of animals as instructed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he sees his son is not on the ship, and he is thinking that he will be saved when he has, he's on a mountain. So we see here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions here, ayah number 45, and Nuh called to his Lord and said, my Lord, indeed my son is of my family, and indeed your promise is true, and you are the most just of judges. So from this passage, which is the mention of the son of Nuh alayhi salam, we know that his son was not in the ship, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions here that he wasn't among the righteous. So what do we learn from his example is that even though he was the son of a prophet, imagine Nuh alayhi salam, he worked hard to convey the message for 950 years. Imagine how hard he must have tried with his son. But it was the qadr of Allah that his son wasn't righteous. And it is believed that in one of the narrations, scholars of tafsir, they say that it is believed his son, the son of Nuh alayhi salam, didn't have good company. He wasn't with the right people. And that is what influenced him to be, not among the righteous. So, my dear sisters, it's really important for us to learn from this story of Nuh alayhi salam, that no matter, if a person is from the family of a prophet, he's the son of a prophet, guidance and success of dunya and akhirah is only possible when we ourselves, hold on to deen. So it is a lot of significance for us to learn from the story. So let's move on. And ayah number 49 talks about the story of Hud alayhi salam. And we know that the story of Hud alayhi salam is that he was sent to the people of Ad. And the other thing we know of the people of Ad is that they were huge in stature. Like they were really, they had huge personalities. And they were the people who dwelled in carved mountains. So their houses were in mountains. They built, or they basically carved mountains into their dwellings, in their houses. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over here tells the story of Hud alayhi salam. And the same message has been given by Hud alayhi salam too. He calls people to worship Allah alone And he says that I do not want any reward from you. And the third thing is, in ayah number 56, we know that he tells the people to have tawakkul in Allah. And inni tawakkaltu ala Allah, Rabbi wa Rabbikum. So he says, indeed, I have relied upon Allah, your Lord, and my Lord and your Lord. And apart from this point, we also see in the previous ayahs, like the other prophets, we see this repetition in Surah Hud about seeking repentance and asking or seeking forgiveness, doing istighfar. So Surah Hud and the stories of these prophets remind us that we should be the ones who do lot of istighfar on a regular basis. And we know from Sunnah that Rasulullah was the one who used to make 100 times istighfar in one day. So we as believers, we always follow the Sunnah, and it is something that we should be bringing it in our daily lives. Maybe you can assign a specific time of the day, or maybe after a particular salah, that we take out time for istighfar. And what are the words of istighfar? We can say astaghfirullah or astaghfirullah wa atubu ilayh. All these are basic simple words which can inshallah give us the benefit of it. And what is the significance of doing istighfar? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the previous ayahs that there will be increase in wealth and increase in basically risk, sustenance, and offspring. And that is something for us to know in the sense that at this time too, we should be the ones who seek forgiveness of Allah or istighfar. So let's move on to ayah number 56, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over here talks about tawakkul. And so what is tawakkul? Tawakkul is basically a reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And tawakkul is, that amazing trust in the plan and decree of Allah. And it is something that is important part of our iman. And as believers, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wants us to rely on Him, to leave matters in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there are so many stories in the Quran which tell us of the importance of tawakkul, like the story of Hajar, the mother of Ismail alayhi salam, and she was left by Ibrahim alayhi salam in the barren desert. She had tawakkul in Allah, and Ibrahim alayhi salam had tawakkul in Allah. That is why we see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't disappoint them. So let's move on. In ayah number 61, we see the story of Salih alayhi salam, or the people of Thamud have been mentioned. And who were these people? The people of Ad, they too, had houses or homes that were, huge kind of dwellings, and they basically succeeded, they came after the people of Ad. And the people of Thamud, they were idol worshippers and they were tyrants. So they used to do a lot of injustice on that. And that is what we see here in ayah number 61. The story of Thamud starts. And to Thamud we send their brother, Salih alayhi salam. He said, "O my people, worship Allah." We see the same message being conveyed to the people by Salih alayhi salam too. And we see that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam too, he also gave us the same message, that not commit shirk. And the other thing is to be grateful for the blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. And the other thing is, we see even from the story of Salih alayhi salam, he's saying, "You have no deity other than Him. He has produced you from the earth and settled you in it." So, he's making them remember the blessing that Allah gave them. So ask for forgiveness. The third thing he's telling them is, do istighfar of Him and then repent to Him. Indeed, your Lord is near and responsive. So we see here the story of Salih alayhi salam, that he gave them warnings, but the people denied his message. And the other thing we learn from the story of Salih alayhi salam is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, warns them that if they do not, accept the truth, then painful punishment is going to come to them. And we see here in ayah number 62, do you forbid us to worship what our forefathers worshipped? So the people of Salih alayhi salam, that is the people of Thamud, they are simply blindly following their forefathers. They are committing shirk. Why? Because they are following their forefathers. So for us too, my dear sisters, we need to, we need to think about our lifestyles. Is it based on what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to do, or are we just blindly following our forefathers? So it is something for us to reflect, and if we feel that we are just following culture, we are following our forefathers, which has no reference to Quran or Hadith, then we need to stop doing that. We need to, look at the example of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, follow his sunnah. And then let's move on. We see from the story of Thamud that they were given a miracle, and that is of a she camel. And oh my people, this is the she camel of Allah. She is to you a sign. So the she camel was a sign for the people as a miracle. And what does Prophet Salih alayhi salam warn them? That they shouldn't, harm the she camel. But what do the people do? But they hamstrung her. Basically, hamstrung means like they cut her from, the lower part of her feet. And then Salih alayhi salam says, because they harmed the sign from Allah, the she camel. So he says, enjoy yourselves in your homes for 3 days. This is a promise not to be denied. So the azab of Allah came to them after 3 days. Let's move on. The story of Lut alayhi salam comes in ayah number 71. And I request that you do read all these ayahs, because I want to summarize this part now and move on to the conclusion of the surah. We see that the story of Lut alayhi salam, just briefly, is that and then in between ayah number 69 and 70, we see Ibrahim alayhi salam and Lut alayhi salam's story is being told at the same time. Why? Because they were 2 prophets who existed at the same time. And Lut alayhi salam's nation was that they were indulged in homosexuality, in the major sin of homosexuality. And we see that Lut alayhi salam, reminds them again and again, this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't like. And something that I wanted to highlight is the beautiful character of Ibrahim alayhi salam that is mentioned here in ayah number 75, where we see that inna Ibrahim lahalimun awwahum munib, that Ibrahim alayhi salam was forbearing, grieving, and frequently returning to Allah. So my dear sisters, it's a big role model for us from the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam in so many ways. He and that is what Quran also tells us, that Ibrahim alayhi salam is the best role model for us. And we also know that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is also the best role model for us. And over here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says he has these 3 qualities, that he was soft-hearted, he wanted good for the people, he had a soft heart, and he was one who, had concern or care for others. And then the third thing is he constantly was the one who turned towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. At times of ease, and also at times when he was in a difficult phase of his life. So we should be the ones who have these 3 qualities. Let's move on. In ayah number 84 to 95, we see the story of Shoaib alayhi salam being mentioned. And the people of Shoaib alayhi salam are the people of Madian. And we learn that they were basically greedy people. We see over here from these ayahs, they were ones who had a corrupted life, and they were not, they used to decrease the measure and the scale. And that is what we see here in ayah 84. That Shoaib alayhi salam, he tells the people of Madian that do not indulge in this. The first thing he tells them is worship Allah And then the second thing he tells them is, do not decrease from the measure and the scale. So there were people who had, a love for the dunya, and they wanted to earn from unlawful means. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the story of the people of Madian here. And then ayah number 96 onwards, we see the story of Musa alayhi salam being mentioned, that how he was sent to Firaun, and Firaun was a tyrant king. And we will see the story of Musa alayhi salam and other prophet stories later on in so many other surahs. That is why I'm not going into details. But inshallah, when the time comes, like Surah Qasas, a lot of details of the story of Musa alayhi salam will come. So we will inshallah summarize and see the detailed story over there. So over here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the story of Musa alayhi salam is how, he was given the miracle, and the magicians, they saw the miracle and they accepted that it is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But Firaun, he was the one who was arrogant, and he continued to deny the message of Musa alayhi salam. So from the stories of all these prophets, we learn that it is important to worship Allah alone, the importance of Tawheed. And we also see the importance or the repetition of seeking forgiveness. And the third thing is turning to Allah, turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at all times. So this is the important summary of the stories of the prophets. And ayah number 101, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and we did not wrong them. After the mention of all these prophets and all these nations, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that when Allah's azab or punishment came on them, Allah says, we did not wrong them, but they wronged themselves. They continued to deny the message. They continued to cause corruption on earth. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that they were the ones who wronged themselves, and they were not availed at all by their gods. So they did shirk, isn't it? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, when the punishment came, their false gods, their false deities did not help them at all, whom they used to call on to. So let's move on. Ayah number 105, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the day it comes, no soul will speak except by his permission. So over here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here mentions on the day of judgment, no one can speak except by the permission of Allah. And among them will be the wretched and the prosperous. So over here, two groups of people are being mentioned. فَمِنْهُمْ شَقِيٌّ وَسَعِيدٌ. So who are these people? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the next ayahs that those who were destined to be wretched, they will be in the fire. So those people who are wrong, indulged in wrongdoings, they are committing shirk, they do not accept the truth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says for them there is a severe punishment, and they are the wretched ones. And the other group we see is the people who are the blessed ones. So that is why Allah says that they will be abiding in ayah number 108. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions about the prosperous people or the blessed people, that those people, they will be in paradise abiding therein as long as the heavens and the earth endure. And in the previous ayah number 107 is about the wretched ones. Ayah number 106 and 107 is about the wretched ones. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that they are going to end in Jahannam. And then the blessed ones, ayah number 108, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says they are the blessed ones because they adhere to the truth, and they are going to be successful in the hereafter. And ayah number 109, again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala negates shirk, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells here again that not to follow the footsteps of forefathers. And we see ayah number 112, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells again, important ayah, so remain on the right course as you have been commanded. فَاسْتَقِمْ كَمَا أُمِرْتَ. That a person has to remain steadfast and remain on Sirat al-Mustaqim. And then the other thing we learn from this ayah is turning towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That a person needs to, his focus in life should be to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the third thing we learn is not to transgress. So these are the three attributes that are being mentioned here. And then ayah number 114, some important ayah that I wanted to highlight. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells here, and establish prayer at the two ends of the day and at the approach of the night. The importance of salah is being given here in this surah, Hud, ayah number 114. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, indeed, good deeds do away with misdeeds. So, good deeds, they wipe away sins. That is a reminder for those people who remember. And so there's the hadith supporting this, where we know from Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam that how it is important for a person, as human beings, we all commit mistakes. But the most important thing is that we rectify our mistakes and we change it with good deeds. So this hadith that comes here is reported in Tirmidhi, and the hadith is that narrated by Abu Dawrah radhiyallahu anhu. Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to me, "Be afraid of Allah and keep your duty to Him, wherever you may be, and follow up the evil deeds with the good deeds. Verily, the good deeds remove the evil deeds, and behave with the people in a high standard of character." So this hadith is in Tirmidhi, and it shows us the importance of, if a person commits a mistake, a sin, then he needs to follow it up with good deeds. Why? Because the reference is here in this ayah and also in this hadith of Tirmidhi, which tells us that good deeds, they wipe away bad deeds. And then the last few ayahs, ayah number 115, it tells us about the importance of sabr. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Fasbir inna Allah la yudiu ajra al-muhsinin," that Allah does not allow the reward of the doers of good to be lost. So over here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ends the surah in ayah number 120 with a very beautiful ayah that these stories of the prophets, what is the purpose of these stories of the prophet? By which we make your heart firm. So basically for us, my dear sisters, that when we look at the stories of these prophets, when we learn the stories of these prophets, how should it help? It should make our hearts firm. And it is a reminder for us. That is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, that it is a reminder for the believers. So whenever we read the stories of these prophets, it should serve these two purposes. These stories should make our hearts firm and steadfast. And the second thing is, it is a reminder for ourselves too, that there are so many lessons for us to learn from the stories of these prophets. So that was Surah Hud. We did, the important ayahs, and I request that you do go through those ayahs that we went over, so that we know more details, inshallah. So that's a homework for you to, inshallah, read those ayahs and read the translation. Let's move on to Surah Yusuf. Inshallah, let's look at the overview of this surah. And we know that Surah Yusuf is a Makki surah, and it's divided into 3 paragraphs. There are 111 verses in the surah, and it was revealed in the last stage of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's life in Mecca. And when was that the Quraysh, their persecution had increased a lot. The Muslims were persecuted a lot, and it was a time, I want you to note these 3 words. It was a time when the surah was revealed, at a time when the Quraysh were persecuting Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. They were planning to kill Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, exile him, or imprison him. And we see that the story of Yusuf alayhi salam is that it is divided into 3 main parts: his childhood, his then youth, and then his adulthood. And you see from the slide so many lessons for us from that 3 phases of his life. Let's move on to the next slide, and we see the overview of the surah. The main theme of the surah is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to learn from the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, that how the life of Yusuf alayhi salam, it is based on, the first object was to give Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam the proof that he was a true prophet, and the second object was to warning for the Quraysh. And then we have these 3 main paragraphs where the story is divided. So inshallah, let's begin this very beautiful surah. It is one of the most beautiful surahs of the Quran. and it is a surah which has a lot of lessons for us. I hope and pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives barakah in our time, that we are able to finish it today. And if we extract a lot of lessons from the surah, inshallah. So let us move on to the beginning part of the surah. So this surah is certainly the most beautiful surah. It has a very powerful message, and it is the only place in the Quran where we see the complete story of Yusuf alayhi salam being mentioned. And because of that, it is a very unique surah. And the other thing is the mention of the prophets has been, in different places of the Quran. We see that the story of Musa alayhi salam has been mentioned at least 25 different times in the Quran, different locations of the Quran. And then the story of Adam alayhi salam, we see that it is at least 6 times that it appears in the Quran. And the story of Isa alayhi salam appears at least 12 times in the Quran. But the story of Yusuf alayhi salam is, the whole story comes here in one, from the beginning till the end. The name of Yusuf alayhi salam comes 2 other places, that is in Surah Anam and Surah Ghafir. The name of Yusuf alayhi salam comes, but his story has been revealed for us to take so many lessons from in this beautiful surah. And so when was it revealed? It was basically revealed around 2 or 3 years before the migration of the Prophet happened. That is why it is Makki surah, and it was revealed in the year of sorrow, Am al-Huzn. And at this time, Rasulullah ﷺ was very demoralized. He was in sorrow. He was in grief. Why? Because he had lost, Khadija radhiyallahu anha, his beloved wife. She had died in this year, and his beloved uncle Abu Talib had also died in this year. So basically, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this surah to uplift Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and to comfort him through this story of Yusuf alayhi salam. And another thing is that we know that when the surah was revealed, the Muslims were being persecuted, and after the migration happened 2 years after the surah was revealed. So this was the time, as we just mentioned, that the Quraysh, they were plotting to kill Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or to imprison him, or to exile him. And this is a very significant thing to connect it to Surah Yusuf, that Yusuf alayhi salam, from the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, we also learned that his brothers, his own brothers, were the ones who were trying to, they plotted to kill him, or imprison him, or exile him. And that is what we see, we will inshallah see. So basically, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving comfort to his beloved Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam through the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. And the other thing is the Quraysh, they asked the Jews of Medina that tell us of something that we can ask Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to know that he's a true prophet. So the Jews, they told the Quraysh that you should ask him about the story of Yusuf alayhi salam and his brothers, because nobody knows this. If he knows it, then he is a true prophet. And that is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this surah. So let us start. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts this very beautiful surah. It is one of my favorite surah too, and I'm sure it will be one of your favorite surahs too when we finish it. So over here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts off with huruf al-muqattat, the separate letters, alif, lam, ra. These are the verses of the clear book. Indeed, we have sent it down as an Arabic Quran that you might understand. So we relate to you, O Muhammad, peace be upon him, the best of stories in what we have revealed to you of this Quran, although you were before it among the unaware. So why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say ahsan al-qasas? And I remember I asked you, what makes a story the best story? What makes a story ahsan al-qasas? What makes a story one of the best stories that you have read? So what are the characteristics, or what are the elements of a story to be good? The first thing is, for myself, I feel the language has to be really eloquent, and you should feel as if you are one of the characters in the story, isn't it? I'm sure you must have read so many stories where you felt that you were part of the story, and you feel the eloquence of the language, the beauty of the language, and the description of the details of the story. So that is what we see in Surah Yusuf. And we see that another thing that makes a story really good is that there should be a good moral to the story. And we see so many morals from the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. Not one, but many good lessons for us to extract, inshallah. The third thing we learn is the one of the traits of elements of a good story is that it is a true story. I feel as a person, as human beings, we relate to stories which are true. Fictional stories are, maybe appealing, but you cannot relate it to fictional stories. So a story needs to be true, because why? You can, find yourself in that position. You can take so many lessons, derive so many lessons from that personality. So these are one of the few elements which make a story one of the best stories. And we see that all these elements are there in this beautiful story of Yusuf alayhi salam. And let's move on. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in ayah number 4, of these stories mentioned when Yusuf alayhi salam, there's always Joseph written here, but I will say Yusuf alayhi salam. And one of these stories mentioned when Yusuf alayhi salam said to his father, "Oh my father, indeed I have seen in a dream 11 stars in the sun and the moon, and I saw them prostrating to me." Every time I read this ayah, it teaches me so many lessons. That look at the tone with which Yusuf alayhi salam is calling on to his father. He is saying, "Li abihi ya abati." It shows love, it shows respect, it shows his relationship with his father, that he is so close that he is ready to go without any hesitation, go and share this dream that he had. And scholars say when this dream came, he was about 10 to 12 years old. So imagine he was so close to his dad even at this young age. And he wasn't hesitant to share this, when you look at it in a different sense, any kid of this age, if he has might think, oh, it's a weird dream, and he doesn't share it with anyone. But look at the wisdom and the connection that he has with his dad, that he goes to his dad and says, "Oh, my father, indeed I have seen in a dream 11 stars in the sun and the moon. I saw them prostrating to me." And then he says, what is the reply of the father? He said, "Oh, my son, do not relate your vision to your brothers, or they will contrive against you a plan. Indeed, shaitan to man is a manifest enemy." So when he sees that his son, and who is the father of Yusuf alayhi salam, that is Yaqub alayhi salam, and we know that he too was a prophet, and he knew that his son was special. Why? Because he saw this dream, and he knew that this dream was something that is not ordinary. And from authentic hadith in Bukhari and Muslim, I just wanted to give you a little bit of extra information in regards to dreams. This hadith in Bukhari and Muslim, we find it in both these sources, tells us about the type of dreams. So there are basically 3 types of dreams. A dream that is from Allah, which is a true dream. A dream which causes distress and comes from shaitan. And number 3, a dream which comes from what a person thinks about when he is awake. Like, for example, in the day, if I'm thinking about, oh, I have to get this assignment done, oh, I have to do this project, it's constantly on my mind. So we will, obviously see a dream about it. Why? Because I've been thinking about it all day. So the third category is a dream which comes from what a person thinks about when he is awake, and he sees it when he is asleep. So that is the reason that this third category of dream comes. So what are the 3 types of dreams based on this hadith from Bukhari and Muslim? The first dream is a true dream which comes from Allah. The second dream, it causes distress or maybe fear, and maybe a nightmare. Why? Because it comes from shaitan. The third dream is why? Because whatever we are thinking during the day, that might be in our dreams. So these are the 3 types of dreams. Let's move on. So Yaqub alayhi salam, he tells his son Yusuf alayhi salam that this is something special, so you shouldn't be telling or sharing your dream with your brothers. Why? Because they might plan against you, because shaitan is going to make them plot against their own brother. And we see in ayah number 6, and thus with your Lord choose you, and thus will your Lord choose you and teach you the interpretation of narratives and complete his favor upon you and upon the family of Yaqub, as he completed it upon your upon your fathers before, Ibrahim alayhi salam and Ishaq alayhi salam. Indeed, your Lord is knowing and wise. So over here, because Yaqub alayhi salam is a prophet, he knows that his dream, his son's dream, is not any ordinary dream, and he knows that his son will become a prophet. That is what he tells here. That Allah will teach you the interpretation of narratives and complete his favor, in the sense that he will become a prophet. Just like how his forefathers were prophets, Ibrahim alayhi salam and Ishaq alayhi salam. Certainly were there in Yusuf alayhi salam and his brothers signs for those who ask. Remember the Quraysh, they asked about the story of Yusuf alayhi salam and his brothers. So over here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that this question of the Quraysh, it is basically so many lessons for the people who ask about the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. And when the next ayah, when they said Yusuf alayhi salam and his brother are more beloved to our father than we, while we are a clan, indeed our father is in clear error. So over here, these are the words of the brothers of Yusuf alayhi salam, and basically they were his stepbrothers. And what are they saying? That their father Yaqub alayhi salam, he loves Yusuf alayhi salam more. And they are saying that even though we are a clan, like we are more in number, but Yaqub alayhi salam still loves his, their brother Yusuf alayhi salam. But they don't think about the fact that Yusuf alayhi salam is the one who, he's showing more respect. He's the one who, is one who is not, evil in the way that he plots against his brothers in any way, or nor does he have jealousy for his brothers. So, on the other hand, we see that the stepbrothers, they are the ones who are feeling jealous. Why? Because their father seems to have more love for him. And we also learn that jealousy is something that harms a person in many ways. Let's move on. So what do they plot? Because of their, jealousy, what do they go to the extent of plotting against their own brother. What do they say? Kill Yusuf alayhi salam or cast him out to another land. The countenance of your father will then be only for you, and you will be after that a righteous people. So why do they plot against their own brother? Because they think if they remove Yusuf alayhi salam, they will get the attention of their father. And note the verse that how do they plot against Yusuf alayhi salam? They say that, cast him out to another land, exile him, and or kill him. And these are the same things that were plotted against Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So basically, from the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving comfort to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Said as speaking one of the brothers, what does he say? Do not kill Yusuf, but throw him into the bottom of the well. Some travelers will pick him up if you would do something. So if you are planning, one of the brothers says that, don't kill him, just throw him into a deep, dark well. They said, oh, our father, why do you not entrust us with Yusuf, while indeed we are to him sincere counselors? So over here, when they have plotted this plan that they are going to throw him into the well, they are trying to convince the dad that, send Yusuf alayhi salam with us, and we are going to take care of him. Send him with us tomorrow that he may eat well and play, and indeed we will be his guardian. So basically they tell him, narrations come that they tell the dad, they tell Yaqub alayhi salam that send him with us, on a fun trip, and we're going to eat and play. So Yaqub alayhi salam, what does he say? Indeed, it saddens me that you should take him, and I fear that a wolf would eat him while you are of him unaware. So he knows that the brothers don't have good intentions, and he, put words to his fear. They said, if a wolf should eat him while we are a strong clan, indeed we would then be losers. So basically trying to convince the dad. So when they took him out and agreed to put him into the bottom of the well, but we inspired to him. This is a very beautiful ayah. So the brothers, they convinced the father, they convinced Yaqub alayhi salam to, send Yusuf alayhi salam. And we see that they took him out, and what did they do? They threw him into a deep, dark well at the bottom of the well. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, look at the mercy of Allah, the plan of Allah. What did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do? But we inspired him, that is to Yusuf alayhi salam. You will surely inform them someday about this affair of theirs, while they do not perceive your identity. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is basically giving comfort to Yusuf alayhi salam that don't feel sad, don't feel sorrow. One day what will happen? That you will inform them. That means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is comforting Yusuf alayhi salam that you will survive this. Even though, imagine he was a young child, 10 or 12 years old, and imagine his own brothers, deserting him and throwing him into the well, and into a well which is dark and deep. Imagine the fear and the agony that he's going through. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with this beautiful, inspiration, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells him that, he's going to be saved, and after many years he will tell his brothers of this deed that they did against him. And then they came to their father at night weeping. So over here scholars say that the brothers of Yusuf alayhi salam, they came back to the dad at night. They came back to Yaqub alayhi salam at night time. Why? Because they wanted to hide their faces. They didn't want their faces to reveal their lie. So they said, "Oh, our father, indeed we went racing each other and left Yusuf alayhi salam with our possessions, and a wolf ate him. But you would not believe us even if you were truthful." So they are basically, using these words that you would not believe us even if we were truthful. So this phrase shows that they are just trying to justify their wrongdoing. And they brought upon his shirt false blood. Yaqub alayhi salam said, rather your souls have enticed you to do something. So patience is most fitting, and Allah is the one sought for help against that which you describe. So this is another beautiful ayah, something that you can highlight. A few gems for us from this ayah is that imagine Yaqub alayhi salam knows that his sons have plotted to kill Yusuf alayhi salam. Imagine his sorrow, the grief that he's feeling at that time. And what does he say? بَلْ سَوَّلَتْ لَكُمْ أَنفُسُكُمْ. He says your souls have, made you do this wrong. And he's saying, instead of, reprimanding his sons, he says, فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ. So patience is most fitting. So over here, I just wanted to define, because over here the word, and we see the story of Yusuf alayhi salam constantly reminds us how important it is for us to do sabr. And over here, these two phrases, فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ, it is really significant for us, to know how important it is for us as believers to have sabr. And sabr at times of ease, and sabr at times of hardship too. How do I say sabr at times of ease? Sabr is basically what that a person, holds himself from any negative reaction, from any negative emotions. And the person continues to be steadfast. He continues to have that iman in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when at times of ease, if a person is doing sabr, scholars say that he is being steadfast. He continues to do the good that he was doing earlier too, isn't it? Because what happens when a person is at ease, when a person has a lot of blessings, that person thinks, everything is good. I have all the blessings. I don't need to make dua. I don't need to do ibadah. But it is important for us that even at times of ease, we should be steadfast. We should still have that strong connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And obviously, when it is difficult time, that also wants, us to have sabr. that holding on to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, having belief in Allah, and stopping yourself from any negative emotions or reaction. So over here, this beautiful ayah tells us that Yaqub alayhi salam, he says, "Fasabrun jamil, wallahu musta'an, wallahu musta'anu ala ma tasifun." He says, and seek, and Allah is the one sought for help against that which you describe. So you see three things that he says, that your souls have made it easy for you to do this wrong. The second thing he says is that I'm going to do sabr, and not just any ordinary sabr that he is going to say. He's saying that I'm going to do beautifully, sabrun jamil, patience that is most beautiful, patience that is most fitting. I'm not going to complain. I'm not going to reprimand you. I'm not going to, hold you accountable in any way. He's not saying anything to them. And then the third thing he says is that Allah is the one that a person should sought for help. The other thing we can learn from this lesson is that when people devise against us, when people plot against us, we should be the ones who do sabr. We should be the ones who seek Allah's help, and not in retaliation, start doing wrong or saying wrong things to them. So this is the beautiful example of the character of Yaqub alayhi salam. Let's move on. Ayah number 19. And there came up a company of travelers. Then they sent their water drawer, and he let down his bucket. He said, "Good news, here is a boy." And they concealed him, taking him as a merchandise, and Allah was knowing of what they did. So what happened, as travelers, caravan was going by, and they went to get out, take water from the well, and they saw that there is a boy in the well. And what do? They said, "Good news." Why? Because they're going to sell him at the market. And they sold him for a reduced price, a few dirhams. And they were concerning him of those content with little. So this is another very beautiful ayah. We see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that imagine how precious Yusuf alayhi salam was to his father. Imagine how beloved he was to his father. And imagine how much he, loved him, and how much he was looking forward that he will be united with him. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, he's going to be a prophet. He is the son of a prophet. He's the grandson of a prophet. Imagine his value, his worth. He's priceless, isn't it? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over here says that those two travelers from the caravan, they sold him for a reduced price. And they knew, they didn't know his value. The next ayah, the one from Egypt who bought him said to his wife. So over here, a minister from Egypt, traditions say that his name was Aziz, who bought him, said to his wife, "Make his residence comfortable. Perhaps he will benefit us, or we will adopt him as a son, and thus we establish Yusuf alayhi salam in the land, and we might teach him the interpretation of events, and Allah is predominant over his affairs." But most of the people do not know. And we see constantly from the stories of Yaqub alayhi salam and Yusuf alayhi salam that they are the ones who constantly turn to Allah. They are the ones who make a lot of du'as to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we see here that the minister of Egypt, he buys him and he takes him home and says that we can adopt him as a son. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over here says that this is how we established Yusuf alayhi salam in the land. That is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, gave him a place of refuge, a place to stay, where he can, later on we know that he flourished and he was successful. And when Yusuf alayhi salam reached maturity, we gave him judgment and knowledge, and thus we reward the doers of good. وَكَذَلِكَ نَجْزِي الْمُحْسِنِينَ. So we see throughout the story of Yusuf alayhi salam that we see that he shows us practically who a muhsin is, a person who does good, utmost good, does ihsan. Ihsan in the sense that, the root word is from beauty. Like all his deeds are, perfection. You see that even though his brothers plotted against him, he was still the one who forgave them. So over here we see that when he, was mature, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that Allah gave him judgment and knowledge. But what happens is, we know from the story of Yusuf alayhi salam that he was the one who had beauty, like he was really good looking, he was handsome. And we know from the hadith that he was really one who had a lot of beauty. And we see here that the wife of Aziz, she tries to seduce him, and she, in whose house he was, sought to seduce him. She closed the doors and said, "Come you." He said, "I seek the refuge of Allah. Indeed, he is my master, who has made good my residence. Indeed, wrongdoers will not succeed." So we hear from this ayah, we learned that even though, imagine him being in this place and thinking it is a place of refuge for him, and he sees that he is put into another trial. Imagine him being deserted by his own brothers, and now when he feels that this is his home, he sees that the wife of Aziz is trying to seduce him. So he's facing another trial of life, and it is a really difficult, challenging situation for him. But and we see from these ayahs, from the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, that he was the one who had, iman. He was the one who didn't fall into the temptation. He was young, he was handsome, and there wasn't anyone at home, to see if he did anything wrong. But because of taqwa, because of fear of Allah, he didn't commit any wrong. And we see that in the later ayahs, he explains, and she certainly, she was determined to seduce him. He would have inclined to her had he not seen the proof of his Lord. And thus it was that we should avert from him evil and immorality. Indeed, he was of our chosen servant. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over here says that Allah sent a burhan, or Allah protected him from a proof from his Lord, and he was stopped from any form of evil or immoral act. And they both raced to the door, and she tore his shirt from the back, and they found her husband at the door. So immediately what happens, she was the one who was trying to seduce him, but when she sees her husband, what does she do? She said, "What is the recompense of one who intended evil for your wife, but that he be imprisoned or a painful punishment?" So she's just turning the tables. She's saying that he is the one who is trying to commit this evil act. Yusuf alayhi salam said, "It was she who sought to seduce me," and a witness from her family, the family of the wife, testified that if his shirt is torn from the front, then she has told the truth. Why? Because he's trying to approach to her, and she's trying to protect herself, and he's of the liars. But if the shirt is torn from the back, then she has lied, and he is of the truthful. Why? Because he is trying to run away from the woman. And this shows that the shirt of Yusuf alayhi salam was indeed torn from the back. So it shows that Yusuf alayhi salam was truthful. So when her husband saw his shirt torn from the back, he said, "Indeed, it is of the woman's plan. Indeed, your plan is great." Yusuf alayhi salam is being told here by the husband, "Ignore this, and my wife." He turns to his wife and says, "Ask forgiveness for your sin. Indeed, you were of the sinful." And the woman in the city said, "The wife of Al-Aziz is seeking to seduce her slave boy. He has impassioned her with love. Indeed, we see her to be in clear error." So basically, there are rumors in the city, and the women in the city, they start saying that the wife of Aziz, has fallen for her slave boy. So what does she do? What does the wife of Aziz do? So when she heard of their scheming, of their plans, and these rumors, she sent for them and prepared for them a banquet, and gave each one of them a knife, and said to Yusuf alayhi salam. So she says, "Okay, you guys think that I am the one who's falling for this person. She invites them to a banquet at her house, and she asks Yusuf alayhi salam to come in front of those women, come out before them. And when they saw him, they greatly admired him and cut their hands and said, "Perfect is Allah. This is not a man, this is none but a noble angel." He was so perfect in beauty, he was so handsome that the woman, they cut their hands, and they say that he is not a human being, but he is an angel. And then let's move on. Ayah number 32. They said, "That is the one whom about whom you blamed me, and I certainly sought to seduce him, but he firmly refused. And if he will not do what I order him, he will surely be imprisoned and will be of those debased." He said, "My Lord, prison is more to my liking than that to which they invite me. And if you do not avert from me their plan, I might incline towards them and thus be of the ignorant." So look at the beautiful akhlaq, or the beautiful character of Yusuf alayhi salam. He sees that he is in this difficult situation. He knows that he is a slave in the house of Aziz, and he knows that the wife of Aziz is at a position that she can make him fall into wrong. So what does he make dua? He says, "Oh Allah, my Lord, prison is better to me." Why? Because he doesn't want to fall into any temptation, any wrong. And imagine he was young. Imagine that if he wanted, nobody would have known. But he is pious, and he is the one who's not falling into the temptations of shaitan and to the invitations of this woman. And he says, "I prefer to be in prison." So his Lord responded to him and averted from him their plan. Indeed, he is the hearing, the knowing. So when Yusuf alayhi salam made that dua, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepted his dua, and he is put in prison. Why? Because the woman, she plots against him, and obviously he doesn't listen to her invite, and she makes him imprisoned. And then we see ayah number 35. Then it appeared to them after that they had seen the signs that Al-Aziz should surely imprison him for a time. So Al-Aziz also, the minister of Egypt also knows that this is something that might not turn out good. So that is why he puts Yusuf alayhi salam in prison. And there entered the prison with him two young men. One of them said, "Indeed, I have seen myself in a dream pressing wine." And the other said, "Indeed, I have seen myself carrying upon my head some bread from which the birds were eating. Inform us of its interpretation. Indeed, we see you to be of those who do good." So we see, I'm going to skip these ayahs about the prison. So we see that when Yusuf alayhi salam is in prison, and what do you imagine when a person is in prison? What kind of company does he have? Obviously, people who are in prison are either criminals, they are thieves, they are robbers, all people of bad character. But we see the beauty of the akhlaq, the character of Yusuf alayhi salam, that even though he is in the company of bad people, we see that he is the one who is inviting them to good. He is the one that people always remember him for his good. And we see that people in the prison, they felt comfortable to come to him and ask the interpretation of their dreams. They knew that he is the one who's going to tell them, words of wisdom. So that is what we see here, that two men come and they tell him of their dream. And then Yusuf alayhi salam, he grabs that opportunity and he gives them the message of Islam, the message of guidance. And he tells them, this is the religion of the truth, and you should be the ones who worship Allah. And then, he gives the interpretation of the dream to those two men. He says the one who sees the wine being poured on his head, he is going to be freed from the jail, and the other one is going to be, persecuted or killed in the prison. So over here, you worship. We see the message that is being given by Yusuf alayhi salam. He gives them justification as to why worship one God in ayah number 40. And then over here, ayah number 41, he gives the interpretation of the dream of the two companions of prison. As for one of you, he will give drink to his master of wine, but as for the other, he will be crucified. He is going to be hanged, and the birds will eat from his head. The matter has been decreed about which you both inquire. And then what happens is that when the person, one of the prison mate who's going to be free, Yusuf alayhi salam mentions to him that when you are free, what should you do? Mention me before your master, before the king, so that maybe he's going to help me come out of the prison. But what happened? Shaitan made him forget the mention to his master, and Yusuf alayhi salam remained in prison several years. And subsequently, the king said. Later on, what happened after some time, after some years, scholars say many years passed. And what happened? This king, he had a dream, and he says, "Indeed, I have seen in a dream 7 fat cows eaten by 7 that are lean, and 7 green spikes of grain, and others that were dry. O eminent ones, explain to me my vision, that is my dream, if you should interpret dreams." So this king had this weird dream, and he sees these cows, fat cows, eating lean cows, and 7 green spikes of grain, and others that were dry. So he asked the people in his court, or the eminent people in his court, in his kingdom, that what is the interpretation of this dream. So they say it is but a mixture of false dreams, and we are not learned in the interpretation of dreams. So they say we have no knowledge. But the one who was freed and remembered after a time said, so that person who was freed from the prison, he remembers that Yusuf alayhi salam was there, who is good at interpreting dream. I will inform you of its interpretation. So send me forth. He, he said, that person said, Yusuf alayhi salam, a man of truth, explained to us about 7 fat cows eaten by 7 lean, and 7 green spikes, and others, that I may return to the people. Perhaps they will know about you. So over here, look at the way how he's addressing Yusuf alayhi salam. He's saying, Ayyuha Siddiqu. He's saying he is, a good friend of ours, of that person. Man of truth, man of, one who is always saying the truth. And that is why we see that he comes back to Yusuf alayhi salam in this prison, and he asks him for the interpretation of this dream. He knows that he is a truthful person. Yusuf alayhi salam said, you will plan for 7 years. So this is the interpretation of the dream, that you will plan for 7 years. You will do cultivation for 7 years consequently. And what you will harvest, leave it in its spike, except a little from which you will eat. So store most of it, and some of it can be consumed. They will come after that 7 difficult years of drought, which will consume what you saved from them, except a little from which you will store. So this is interpretation of the dream he gives them. And when the king hears an interpretation of the dream, he's really impressed, and the king tells him, bring him to me. And when the messenger came to Yusuf alayhi salam, what does he say? Imagine, he's been in the prison for so many years. And what does he say? Return to your master and ask him what is their hands. Indeed, my Lord is knowing of their plan. So we see here, Yusuf alayhi salam says that he wants his name to be cleared. He just doesn't want freedom, but he wants his name to be cleared of that, wrong allegation that was put against him. So said the king to the woman, what was your condition when you sought to seduce Yusuf alayhi salam? They said, perfect is Allah, we know about him no evil. So the woman, the wife of Aziz, she also acknowledged the fact that Yusuf alayhi salam is of good character, and he hasn't done anything wrong. Now the truth has become evident. It was I who sought to seduce him, and indeed he is of the truthful. And we see this repetition of his character, that he is Sadiq. He is the one who's truthful. That is being said by the wife of Aziz. The same trait is being mentioned by the people in the prison, that he is the truthful one. So imagine, Yusuf alayhi salam, the beauty of his akhlaq, of his character, is that he was, truthful in the worst of places. He was truthful in the most difficult situations when he was, being seduced by the wife of Aziz. So a lesson for us to extract from the story of Yusuf alayhi salam is that no matter what the situation is, no matter with whom we are, in whose company we are, we should be the ones who are adhering to the truth. Remember the hadith we did a few days back, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to write the name of the person with the truthful as long as he continues to say the truth all his life. And then we see in the next ayah, so that is so Al Aziz will know that I did not betray him in his absence, and that Allah does not guide the plan of betrayers. So, basically the name of Yusuf alayhi salam is cleared. And the other thing is, we know, and I do not acquit myself. Indeed, the soul is a persistent enjoiner of evil, except those upon which my Lord has mercy. Indeed, my Lord is forgiving and merciful. Some of the scholars say these are the words of Yusuf alayhi salam, and some scholars say these are the words of the wife of Aziz, that she, seeks repentance, and she acknowledged the fact that she was wrong. And the king said, "Bring him to me. I will appoint him exclusively for myself." And when he spoke to him, he said, "Indeed, you are today established in position and trust." So this is the reward of people who do ihsan. Excuse me. So what we learn from the story of Yusuf alayhi salam is that he was the one who was truthful. He was the one who didn't fall into temptation. He did sabr. Imagine, he did sabr when he was in that deep dark well. He didn't despair from the mercy of Allah, from the help of Allah. He didn't, despair from the mercy of Allah when he was in that difficult situation when the wife of his master is trying to seduce him. He didn't fall into temptation of, his age or his beauty, and he was the one who held on to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So over here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives him the reward, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him position. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Yusuf alayhi salam says, "Appoint me over the storehouses of the land. Indeed, I will be a knowing guardian." Because of his own, he knew that he has expertise in this. That is why Yusuf alayhi salam says that I want to be appointed, over the storehouses of the land. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, very beautiful ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَكَذَلِكَ مَكَّنَّا لِيُوسُفَ فِي الْأَرْضِ. And thus we established Yusuf alayhi salam in the land to settle therein wherever he willed. So this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewarded him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him that status. Imagine he was basically living in Palestine. And from there, when he was thrown into the well, the trading caravan took him and they sold him in Egypt. Imagine he had to, he changed countries. He didn't know anyone in this new land. And this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because he had sabr, he had, tawakkul in Allah. He did not compromise in his, his character. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him the reward that he gave him the status of dunya. We touch with our mercy whom we will, and we do not allow to be lost the reward of those who do good. This is another important ayah that you can highlight. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells here from the story of Yusuf alayhi salam that Allah did not waste the reward of any person who does good. So my dear sisters, for ourselves too, no matter how difficult the situation is, no matter how difficult people we are facing, maybe they're plotting against us, maybe they're trying to ridicule us, maybe they're wanting to harm us. But remember the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, that his faith in Allah never ended. He always had faith in Allah. He held on to, his deen. He held on to Allah. He had tawakkul in Allah. He had faith in Allah. And we know that he did sabr. He continued to do good no matter what the situation is. Sometimes what happens when we are faced with difficult people or when we are faced with difficult situations, we tend to become, like rude. We tend to become really moody, and we tend to say things which might hurt others. And the justification we give is that we say, oh, I had a bad day. Oh, the so and so person was really mean to me, and we think it's okay to be, a bit grumpy. But look at the beautiful character of Yusuf alayhi salam. Never do you see from his beautiful story that he's, saying anything that hurts others, anything that is, harming anyone, or plotting against the people who plotted against him. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over here tells us, and the reward of the hereafter is better for those who believed, and we're fearing Allah. So let's move on. We see that later on, after many years, the brothers of Yusuf alayhi salam, they come, and there's the drought which he had predicted. And we see that they come to Yusuf alayhi salam to seek food. So they came from all the way from Palestine to Egypt to seek food from. Imagine this, their situation, that now they are in need, and they are coming to Yusuf alayhi salam to take help. And the brothers of Yusuf alayhi salam came seeking food, and they entered upon him, and he recognized them, but he was to them unknown. And when he had furnished them with their supplies, he said, bring me a brother of yours from your father. That is, the youngest brother, Binyamin. And he asked them to bring that brother next time when they come to take food. Do you not see that I give you full measure, and that I am the best of accommodators? But if you do not bring him to me, no measure will be there for you from me, nor will you approach me. So he tells them that you have to bring him next time, otherwise I won't be giving you any food. So when they go back, let's skip a few ayahs. When they go back to their dad, they say that, this person, he's really kind. He gives us plenty of food. So, but the thing is, he wants us to bring our brother. And the same fear comes over Yaqub alayhi salam. And he said, should I entrust you with him? That is the youngest son of Yaqub alayhi salam, except as I entrusted you with his brother before. But Allah is the best guardian, and He is the most merciful to the merciful. So of the merciful. So over here, he is a bit skeptical. He doubts their sincerity, the sincerity of his sons. But he says, okay, I will send Binyamin with you, because I rely on Allah. And then they, see that Yusuf alayhi salam not only gives them the food, but he also gives them the merchandise for which they had to buy the food. And basically Yusuf alayhi salam does that so that they're convinced to bring the brother next time. And we see over here, we will inshallah end it in a few minutes. I just wanted to stop at this ayah where Yaqub alayhi salam says, and he said to their sons, O my sons, do not enter from one gate, but enter from different gates, and I cannot avail you against the decree of Allah at all. The decision is only with Allah. Upon Him I have relied, and upon Him let those who would rely. So over here shows us the importance of tawakkul. Remember, we talked about tawakkul in the beginning. That we see the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, how he had tawakkul in Allah, and from the words of Yaqub alayhi salam too, that he was the one who relied on Allah. He knew that even though Yusuf alayhi salam was taken from him, he had tawakkul in Allah, that he will be reunited with Yusuf alayhi salam. And he tells his sons that when they enter into the city of Egypt to get the food from Yusuf alayhi salam, he tells them, do not enter from one gate, but you all should enter through different gates. Why? Because he thinks that maybe if all of them enter through one gate, the people might think, scholars say, people might think that the interpretation of this ayah is that the city might get scared, thinking that because they are, a large number of group of men. So people might think that they have come to rob them. So that is why he says that you should enter from different gates. Another interpretation is that so that maybe, evil eye doesn't afflict them. Because imagine all these sons coming in through one gate together. So, he says you should go through different gates. So we will inshallah end it here. A few more ayahs, the conclusion of Surah Yusuf. I didn't want to rush. And I hope we have a lot of lessons for ourselves to extract from today's story. I want you to join, take some points from today's story of Yusuf al-Islam. What are the lessons that you have learned from his story? And tomorrow we will do conclusion of the story, and inshallah end it there, and then start off Surah Hud and Surah Ibrahim, inshallah. So let us do a brief review of what we learned today, inshallah, and look at the slides of today's gems, and then inshallah we will do dua and conclude. And for tomorrow we will do the concluding ayahs of Surah Yusuf. So what we learned from today's juz is how important it is for a person to resist the nafs, and why should a person resist one's nafs or desires, not fall into temptation. Why? Because it should be done for the sake of Allah, and we see that from the beautiful character of Yusuf alayhi salam. And we also learned from this ayah that the reward of muhsin, a person who does good, is never wasted. So we should be always remembering that Allah will never let our good deeds go to waste, and reliance in Allah's plan and being patient. And then these are the last two points are from Surah Hud and Surah Ibrahim. Inshallah, we will do it tomorrow. So let us do the Asmaul Husna quiz. Yesterday I had given you a few hints. Any guesses as to which name is it? We had said that this name of Allah appears in Hadith, and it has a root word Jim, Mim, Lam, and we know that it has something to do with beauty, or beautiful. So any guesses? So let us see which name is that. It is Al-Jamil. And we know from this beautiful name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it teaches us to know that our deeds should also be beautiful. It should be as how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to be. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not just looks at the outward of deeds, but also the niyyah is really important. And this is how we can live by this beautiful name of Allah. And we also learned from Surah Anam about libasut taqwa, that not show outward beauty, but also the beauty of our heart, about taqwa, which beautifies our heart. So this is something that we can abide or live by, this beautiful name of Allah. And if you want to read more, inshallah, you can go on to understand Quran and learn more beautiful points about this beautiful name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So let us end it here. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our coming here. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give barakah in our time, in our homes. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us for our shortcomings. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remove all hardship and illnesses from our lives. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give shifa to any brother or sister who's suffering from the virus in our communities. Ameen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us in His protection. Ameen. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلبي على دينك سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.